Welcome back to Collective Perspective. I believe we're on episode 43. Should have checked that before we started.
Oh,
Craig,
what a rookie.
how the heck are you?
I am fantastic. How have you been, my friend?
Fantastic as well. We both just came off a nice little vacation for Thanksgiving holiday, and I'm ready to hit the ground running here after Thanksgiving with some more Collective Perspective content. But more
Heck
importantly than
yeah.
that, it's the holiday season, and I love me some Christmas time. What about you?
Oh, me too. I live for the peppermint mocha like you would not believe.
Yeah.
I become a white girl in the fall in their pumpkin spice latte. I am going to Starbucks every day I can, getting my points for my free peppermint mocha, adding up the points so I could just keep drinking it like it's water. I love it. And I just love Christmas. I'm a Christmas guy. I love driving around the neighborhood, looking at lights, love buying
Yeah.
gifts. It's a jolly old time. Like, people get seasonal depression or sad around the winter, and it's when I thrive. It's where I feel like I'm meant to be, which is why I live in the desert, where it's cold for like 2 months a year.
I love that crap too. I mean, y'all don't get snow, right?
Now, it has snowed, I think, once since I've moved here, and it's like as soon as it hits the ground, it melts. So it might as well not even count.
Yeah, pretty much same. Yeah, I love Christmas as well. Everything you just described. I'm more of a pumpkin spice guy. I'll get me a PSL any day in November. Still getting the pumpkin cold brews when I can, but peppermint
I
mocha goes
respect it.
hard for sure.
It is the best coffee drink. Don't test me. I see you peppermint haters getting ready to type in the comments right now. I won't hear it. You can't change my mind. It's the best.
I'm sure we've already lost half our audience because we buy stuff from Starbucks.
You know what? It's convenient and it's there. All right. Sometimes you just go with what's most convenient. All right. I mean, I don't like paying $6 for a cup of coffee either. It's disgusting, but we all have to make sacrifices to make ourselves happy.
Just
We
for
all
1 month,
deserve
right?
a little treat. Exactly. We all deserve a little treat.
All right, let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about something that we should have probably talked about many months ago, many moons ago. We're
Yeah,
going
I'm
to talk
surprised we
about
haven't done this already.
yeah. So we're always telling you guys like you should watch out for this publisher on the Game Boy Advance. Everything they have put out is so rare. We're just going to do a whole episode dedicated not just GBA but like publishers to be aware of when you're buying games, when you're researching stuff on eBay, when you're at the game store. Um, I'm at this point where I just like to go to a game store and like shop around for crap that I've never even heard of. You know, just kind of like learn. We've talked about that, but I also
Hmm.
want to see because something inside of my brain really appreciates owning a rare item that like no one else is gonna own or like no one else is going to know about.
Or care about.
Yeah, and like that's something I've developed over the last few years as I've started to get more into this YouTube channel and into the community and stuff. And so like variants often play a lot of role into that. You know, sometimes you'll research something, and you know there's this rare variant like PS2. This just came to my head, but there's like a uh, not Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy like 10 or 12. I think it's 10, but it's typically published by Square Enix, and
Hmm.
then the really hard to find one is published by SquareSoft or vice versa or something along those
No, that's
lines.
right. That's right. I was seeing if you'd remember right. It was Final Fantasy X.
Like little crap like that. Like a game store is gonna list it for the same price, and they're not gonna know the difference. They just see Final Fantasy X, and move on with their lives. But you can do some research. You can watch Collective Perspective, and you can learn about things to look out for.
You. You could do it. We believe in you.
So that's what we're talking
Waste
about
your
today.
lives scrolling through eBay for 10 hours a week like we do. It's fun, we
um,
promise.
I guess we can just take turns. I don't know how many you have written down. I just have a handful, but
I'll let you lead. I'll let you lead.
I think the most obvious one that I talk about on this YouTube channel and that we reference a lot is like Natsume. Um, and this is for pretty much all consoles. Maybe not so much modern stuff, but Natsume had a record of just being this company that whenever you look back in history and you look on eBay, there are so many games that that have like skyrocketed in price. You know, the first thing that comes to mind is Harvest Moon, because I just did a whole podcast on it. But Harvest Moon is like a $400-$500 loose cartridge.
That's insane.
They published they published Pocky and Rocky 1 and 2 and the GBA one later. I would say the one franchise of theirs that you don't have to worry about, ironically, is Harvest Moon. You know, ever since the first one, they have made a lot more copies, and you can find that game on any console pretty much readily available.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say for Natsume, anything like N64 and PS1 down is on the lower print side of things. Once we started to get into like GameCube, PS2 era is when you could probably find a lot their stuff more frequently. But anything kind of before that time is something I think is worth keeping an eye out for.
And I think that is all I have to say as far as examples go for Natsume.
Okay. So first up on my list is one that I've talked about in the past before, but especially I kind of centered my list around like publishers and the consoles related to the scarcity that I've noticed. So first up for my list, I put Little Orbit, and specifically their games on the 3DS are very hard to come by. As many of you know, Barbie Groom and Glam Pups, the $4,000 Barbie game, published by them. Disney Violetta, another hard to find game, published by them. The Winx Club, also published by them. So they do a lot of like specifically like young girl games that are very, very low print. And like Disney Violetta in the Winx Club game isn't too expensive yet, so and they've done a couple of other games on the 3DS as well. Those are just kind of the three games for the system that I think are the hardest to find by them. So if you're into 3DS collecting, or if you go to your local game store and see the 3DS section, Little Orbit is definitely the publisher to look out for.
So Violetta also on Wii is incredibly, it's like up there, you know, nothing on Wii is that expensive, but that's one of like the top 5, top 10. I think. Am I making that up?
It might be. I don't know. I know there is a Wii version.
Dang it.
But I'm not sure off the top of my head. When I was collecting for Wii, I got pretty deep, but I didn't ever end up owning that game, so I don't remember off the top of my head.
I wanted to make that connection, but it's going to be crazy if I'm thinking of something else.
There's another singing game on there that's expensive, so
yes,
you might be thinking of that. It's like a Mexico exclusive game or something, but I think Disney Violetta is on the Wii.
It is
I just
on
don't know
Wii,
if it's rare.
And there is like one copy listed right now, and it's $50.
Really?
So.
Look at that. So, you know what? Leave it in the video. Don't cut this out. Someone go buy Disney Violetta on the Wii. We just made you a million. We just made you a millionaire.
It's not one copy. It's Deal Tavern, so he's got a whole box full of them. More than 10 available. All right. So it's not
Deal Tavern. It's always Deal Tavern.
It's not a top 5 most expensive. I was thinking of that Mexico exclusive one you were just talking about.
But it's still worth looking into, because that's one that once Deal Tavern runs out, then the supply is going to be scarce. So if you're into Wii collecting, not a bad idea.
And it is published by Little Orbit. That's what I really wanted to check.
Yes. All right, what you got next?
I also had Little Orbit down. I had a question mark on it, though, so I'm glad that you brought it up. I've had a question mark because the only one I knew about off the top of my head was Barbie. So that's cool.
There you go. See?
Let's talk about Atlas, the other big one. Right alongside Natsume is definitely Atlas, and this is another one where I could probably give you infinite examples. Off the top of my head is going to be a little tough, but I did write down Bomberman on PS1. I believe it is Bomberman Fantasy Race. Does that sound right?
I'm pretty sure because I know what you're talking about, the Bomberman racing game. I think that's what it's called.
I think there's like three Bombermans on PS1. The one that's published by Atlas is actually like a low key rare. Like I don't think a lot of people know about it. Would definitely keep an eye out for that. What other Atlas
Hmm.
comes to mind, Craig?
It's hard with Atlas because they're another one where I feel like Natsume, where I think there's kind of a cutoff. Like I'd say once you get to like PS2 ish era, that's when there's like anything before that is usually on the lower print side. But there's a handful of PS2 games that you can find any day of the week, like Persona 4, Persona 3, Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, Digital Devil Saga 1 and 2. I might be mixing up the names. But then they have, plenty of other weird random games on the PS2 that are still hard to find. And then basically anything before that, PS1, Atlas, all those games are low print. Persona 1 and 2, famously very expensive PS1 games. Tail Concerto, they published, which is a very rare PS1 game. Some NES games, even, like
Yeah.
Wacky
Yeah.
Races. Uh, so pretty much anything like pre 2005 Atlas is definitely worth keeping an eye on or checking the price of if you come across it for fairly cheap. Of course, their GameCube games are famously expensive, Go Go Hypergrind and
Oh,
Cubivore, so
yeah.
they got a lot of heavies. Basically anything by them on the Game Boy Advance is pretty expensive too, except for Super Dodgeball Advance. I think that's the only Atlas game that isn't expensive on the Game Boy Advance. Of course, famously, Jack Bros, one of the most expensive Nintendo games, period, on the Virtual Boy. Multi-$1,000 game. So there's endless and endless Atlas examples, and it makes me sad because at one point in my life I was like, I'd love to go for like a full Atlas set, like every game they ever released, and I was just like, I can't do it, man. There's too much. And I mean, they have some games like Spud's Adventure and stuff like that where it's like you good luck even finding a copy,
Yeah.
on the original Game Boy. So, but the thing with Atlas is not only are the games low print, they're usually very good. They had a very good eye early on for good hidden gems coming out of Japan being published in the West, and they're one of the first companies to kind of be bringing a lot of those weird games out here. But they also knew it wasn't going to make a lot of money, so they didn't print a lot of copies, and now that's why you can't find a lot of them.
Why did they go ham on freaking Super Dodgeball Advance, man? That game is so common, it's ridiculous.
Right? It's funny because every other Game Boy Advance game they have is pretty rare, if I remember right. But just the Super Dodgeball is this just not that much. I think even complete now, I think you can get it for like 40-50 bucks. So it's not too shabby.
I was right. It is Bomberman Fantasy Race, so keep an eye out for that
There,
one.
there you go. All
Um,
right.
yeah, go for it.
Oh, sorry. Do you have anything else to say on Atlas?
You're good. You brought up a lot of good ones that I wish I would have written down ahead of time.
I
Wacky
can't
Races
lie.
for sure.
I'm an Atlas super fan for sure. I've always been super into their stuff, and I'm very fascinated with them as a company. So, uh, my head is full of useless Atlas knowledge.
Because they are good games, like Craig said. They have
Yeah,
the low print run going against them, and the fact that they're in high demand going against them. So you're
yeah,
gonna be
and
paying a
most of their
premium.
games are RPGs too.
Yeah,
So, I mean, it's like in. I mean, talk about taking chances. Not a rare game, but they're the reason we got Demon Souls. Think about how big Dark Souls is now. I mean, we only got that in the West because Atlas was like, all right, well, Sony's not going to publish their own game out here. We'll do it.
oh
And look what
wow,
that turned into. So,
interesting.
yeah, so fun fact if you didn't know about that. Next on my list, I have, specifically for PS4 and Vita, I have Idea Factory. You may or may not know them, because they're definitely a bit more of a niche publisher. They also make their own games along with a company called Compile Heart. They usually co-publish and co-develop a lot of their games. They're most famously known for the Hyperdimension Neptunia games, which are turn-based role-playing games that are basically a parody of the console wars. Like each character represents like Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Sega, but without using the actual names, but like making it obvious what they're named after, like Neptune, like the canceled Sega console Neptune and stuff like that. So very funny, quirky. They're very uh, particular to taste, so they're definitely not games for everybody. But all the games are fairly hard to come by. A lot of their games, they're starting to branch out more now. They're on Switch and stuff. And even the Switch games are kind of hard to come by, usually a bit more low print. Like, you can't just go to stores and buy any of those games new now in the Neptunia franchise. But they also have a bunch of weird games like Dragonstar Varnir on PS4, and just a bunch of really weird anime games that it's like, last time I checked for Dragonstar Varnir on eBay, I only saw new copies of old stock from Best Buy, and there wasn't any used copies even. So it's like just like a super niche market of games with a hardcore fan base, and a lot of those games have one and done print runs. So definitely just something to look out for, because I could see a lot of those games going up in price in the coming years. On the Vita, they're already very expensive, mostly because it's the Vita. But like the PS4 and Switch games, those I think are definitely going to become more collectible games and sleeper hits as time goes on.
Nice. Idea Factory. Yeah. Write it down, folks.
Idea Factory. They're coming for you. It's the modern day Atlas.
The next one I have is a Game Boy Advance special here. It's the XS Games publisher.
Ooh.
They published MotoGP, and they published XS Moto. I'm questioning if they published MotoGP. I should have took more notes, but for sure, what
shooting from the hip.
The takeaway here is XS Games. Anytime you see them on the Game Boy Advance, there is a high chance that that game is gonna have like 0 to 2 copies on eBay for like several months. Not just like a day, but like several months. This publisher, I don't know, very low print runs, I guess, or everyone threw them in the trash. One or the other. We have no clue. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that one.
All right, and last on my list,
you will see them on other consoles. So this kind of, I've every time I see XS Games on like Wii, I think, oh crap, I better look that up, and it pretty much never pans out. It's always a common game. So this is pretty exclusive to Game Boy Advance collecting. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Max.
You're good. I don't know.
So last on my list, I don't really have anything to say on what you just talked about, because I don't honestly know. I believe you. But the last game I had on my list was Maximum/Maximum Family Games. They're kind of like the same company. They use both depending on the game that they're talking about. Mostly, I'm talking about their games on the Wii and the 3DS. So they've made a buttload of racing games for the Wii. Like some very famously rare ones like Super Truck and Super Karts and Rally Racer, Crash Car Racer. They're all pretty hard to find, honestly. Super Karts and Super Truck are the two that seem to be in most people's minds. But basically all of those Maximum racing games are pretty hard to find. They also did American Mensa Academy, which is a famously uncommon Wii title. I don't think it's as rare as people say, honestly, but it's definitely harder to find. They have some weird games on 3DS, like Deer Drive Legends, and also American Mensa Academy once again. They also did, I believe, the 50 classic games on 3DS, which is hard to come by. So yeah, if you see Maximum games or Maximum Family games, those are definitely some publishers to look out for on the Wii and 3DS.
I'm always keeping an eye out for those at game stores, and I know some of them are dirt common, and
yeah,
I don't know which ones. I need to make a list.
Yeah, but those are definitely easy to catch people slipping on because they look like shovelware. So
yeah,
definitely keep an eye out.
Yeah, you just described half of the Wii library.
Pretty much. I mean, when I was collecting for the Wii, I struggled to find almost nothing, to be honest. So I don't really know if there's many truly rare games on the Wii. I'm sure some other people can attest to that, but it's kind of like the Wii U, where nothing's that hard to find. So, but there's just too much garbage on Wii. I couldn't do it. Couldn't have a wall of garbage.
All right, to correct my previous statement, MotoGP not published by XS Games. My bad.
Oh my god.
but
What
for
the
sure
heck,
XS
Christian?
Moto.
Bird Dog Gaming is lying to us?
Um, they did 3 GBA games according to Wikipedia. It was Tenpin Alley, Thunder Alley, and XS Moto.
Oh,
Um,
Thunder Alley is pretty uncommon, so I can believe that.
right. And then on the DS, Aqua Panic, I'm pretty sure is that seems
Ooh.
rare to me. I feel like that's a rare one.
I don't know if it's rare, but I definitely have seen it and heard of it before, so I think it's fairly uncommon.
Well, keep an eye out for XS games when you are collecting.
Yeah, keep an eye out for everything. And support Idea Factory. They make weird, interesting stuff. So buy their games whether you get their old stuff or their new stuff. Just because I got Idea Factory on the mind now after talking about them.
The next one is Xseed. Xseed has quite a few uncommon to rare titles. I would say mostly from the Wii era. Um,
Yeah, weirdly enough.
and that's it. I don't need to go into detail on that one. There is Little Orbit with a question mark. We talked about that one. Ubisoft on handheld. So when you see Ubisoft with the old rainbow logo before they went to the purple circular logo, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, there's a lot of like dirt common games on consoles from Ubisoft. Tom Clancy, super popular franchise, sold tons of copies everywhere. But you go over to the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and the Tom Clancy games are, some of them are common. Some of them, it's going to be really hard to find a box. Colin McRae Rally on the Game Boy Advance. That's one of I've talked about it on the channel, but honestly, I'm going to give you a tip. Anytime you see a motorcycle or like a car on Game Boy Advance box art, you should definitely look it up on eBay. They're almost all expensive or hard to find, or both.
Oh, yeah.
Rayman 2 on Game Boy Color. Like, good luck finding that game complete in box. It's just not out there. Sabrina the Teenage Witch on Game Boy Advance. It's like shovelware garbage like that you think would be
It's a
such
childhood game of mine.
Really?
Yeah, I had that game as a kid. I had all three of them. I was like super into the cartoon and the live action show.
Wow.
So I had them all, and now I don't have any of them.
I got myself a copy of Sabrina like on Mercari, I think, during one of my eBay live streams for like $25 or something. These are everything we're talking about. Not everything. A lot of the stuff we're talking about, like, you can find it cheap if you're patient. So make those save searches.
Yeah, it's more so just looking out for it opposed to having to pay up for it with a lot of this stuff.
Possibly my favorite company to talk about on all of YouTube is Conspiracy Entertainment. They have this really cool like Michelangelo alien logo. They did a lot. They did quite a few games that ended up being rare. There is the Flintstones, Big Trouble in Bedrock. The Flintstones, man, as a series, 90% of those games are rare or hard to find. It's crazy. But the one that they released on Game Boy Advance, not easy to find. They did the infamous Buster's Bad Dream or Bad Dreams on GBA, Tiny Toon Adventures. That game is like a top 5 most expensive on the platform. On the other hand, they did another Tiny Toon Adventures game, and that one is dirt common. I'm pretty sure Deal Tavern has that.
Interesting.
Fievel's Gold Rush and American Tail. Got to keep an eye out for it.
Yes.
Gadget Racers.
Yeah, it's definitely uncommon.
I haven't looked this one up in a while, but I got Puzzled on Game Boy Color. That one is also Conspiracy Entertainment. Might want to keep an eye out for it. Oh, would you look at that? They did Animaniacs on GameCube, and we all know that one's like $100.
Which it shouldn't be, but
that's pretty much it. Definitely keep an eye out for that. The next one, Dreamcatcher, another GBA favorite. I don't know, there's so many publishers on GBA that you gotta look out for. Dreamcatcher, they did Pink Panther. Yet another old cartoon. It's like, why were they even making a Pink Panther game in 2003 or whatever? Um, they have just the word Dreamcatcher with like a star circle logo around it, whatever. And they did quite possibly the rarest GBA game, Ultimate Beach Soccer. That one is definitely one to keep an eye out for. Or is it Ultimate Beach Volleyball? I think it's volleyball.
It is volleyball. Did a
Um,
whole episode about it.
and I think the last one I have here is Midway, which is weird because, like Ubisoft, Midway was a big company in this time. They had plenty of money to go around. They had plenty of games coming out. But the Game Boy Advance and some on the GameCube specifically, like if you think about NFL Blitz Pro, that's one game that's like probably undervalued where it's at now. That game does not cost as much as it probably should have. Just saying that due to the lack of how many copies are listed at one time. And Game Boy Advance, I don't have an example right now, but definitely keep an eye out for Midway on GameCube and Game Boy Advance, and maybe even more platforms.
And I had one last one that I actually just thought of, so I want to bring it up.
Heck yeah.
Old Way Forward games.
Oh yeah.
Old Way Forward. Shantae, the obvious one, but of course there's also Wendy Every Which Way. Godzilla Domination is a semi-uncommon Game Boy Advance title that's fantastic. Same
Heck
with
yeah.
Sigma Star Saga. So very high quality games. Contra 4 on the DS. So they had a lot of cool stuff that wasn't super heavy in print. They also did the most hated Silent Hill game, Book of Memories, on the PlayStation Vita. So
Is that tough to
that game
find?
sold. It's expensive, so
So that's an
it's like
interesting
$100
one
game.
because that's a developer and they jumped around to different publishers and they still ended up having all these uncommon games.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't publish, right? Like Shantae wasn't published by them.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of broke the rules here.
No, you're
but,
good.
Still, Way Forward is a good combo of uncommon / rare in quality, I'd say, to look out for.
The the Game Boy Advance in general just has a lot of tough to find boxes. You know, it's a cardboard console that was aimed at children, just like the Game Boy Color and Game Boy. Finding cardboard for a lot of that library is going to be tough, but these are the trends that I have noticed over my last 4 or 5 years of going for the console.
Moral of the story: just collect Game Boy Advance. Just collect Game Boy Advance, and you'll get everything you need.
We don't need any more competition, Craig. Oh, another one.
That ship sailed for me long ago.
Another Ubisoft one that just popped in my head was that King Kong game.
Oh yeah, definitely not easy to find.
That's it. Anything else you want to add, Craig?
No, play Peter Jackson's King Kong by Ubisoft on console because it's the best movie licensed game of all time.
The GBA one was like a spin-off, right? The PSP got the full game, obviously, because it was a real console. And the GBA got this game called Kong 8th Wonder of the World. Kept the same box art. So I don't know. Maybe that game's good. Who knows?
I've actually never played it, so I'll get back to you. I'm free this weekend.
All right, guys. We will see you in a few days or a week or something for episode 44.